So let's talk a little bit about how we kind of always wrap this up, right, Ryan? Is after we've talked about the player, we talk about what's next. And I think this is the really interesting aspect of what's next. Because I believe there's 3 players on the board left for Notre Dame on the offensive line. And I can only confidently say that there's 2 spots. We're going to dive more into this specifically as far as who is going to come or not next week, but let's just kind of set the table. This is now your 3rd offensive line commitment in the 2023 class. You've got Sam Pendleton and Joe Otting, who are interior players, even though Pendleton plays tackle in high school, but we project him as an interior player. You have Sullivan Absher, who it's kind of funny, you and I feel the same way about Absher and Jagasaw. It's just reversed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I believe you see Absher as a tackle first, guard second, correct?
And I kind of prefer him inside a guard.
You've kind of come down to him being an inside guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jagasaw I see as a tackle that could be an inside guy, and obviously Freeling and Elijah Page are tackles.
Pure tackles.
In my opinion. Pure tackles. So you've got sort of 3 of your spots done. You've kind of got your interior handled now. Now again, they recruited Sullivan Absher as a tackle. They're going to give him a chance to tackle, but we always know those kind of tackles for Notre Dame have a chance to move inside. He's a Josh Lugg caliber kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's about finding tackles. That's the emphasis now. That's the key. And Notre Dame has 3 kids on the board. One is already visited for this month. That's Elijah Page. We talked about him yesterday. Notre Dame absolutely knocked that visit out of the park. Notre Dame is going to be hosting Monroe Freeling this weekend, and then they will have Charles Jagasaw on campus. I'm not sure if I got to talk to Sean. He's not coming from the 17th to the 19th, like that Friday to Sunday. I believe he's going to show up on Sunday and then stay till like Monday or Tuesday for his official visit, and then that'll be the last of his visits. So it's those 3 guys, and Notre Dame for sure has two spots left. And my understanding is they're going to take the first 2 of those 3 that want to commit. That's my understanding of it. Now, depending on how the order goes of who wants to commit when, it's going to be tough, but I'll just say this. There's a lot of talk about 6 offensive linemen and all those kind of things. I'll say this. So talking to sources, it won't be easy, but Notre Dame has not closed the door on 6 offensive linemen. And the reason why is that the guy that they expect to pick last from just a timing standpoint is Monroe Freeling, who has said adamantly he's going to carry this into the fall. Mm-hmm. My understanding is if you're not going to say it's going to be tough to do, but we're open to it, is because of him and Jagasaw being the last. Most likely Jagasaw and Freeling will be the last 2 guys to make a decision. I think Elijah Page is going to make a decision this month for whoever. And then we expect Jagasaw has said to Sean that he could see himself wrapping things up end of June into July. And then, of course, Freeling has been adamant, Ryan, I could change my mind, but there's always that but. I'm pretty consistent into the fall. So it's a work in progress. But what I know is that of those 3 guys, Notre Dame views all of them as kind of being on the same level. Now, we can all agree to disagree or whatever the case may be, but, because how we feel about it. And like for me personally, Ryan, I know you agree, you don't turn down Monroe Freeling. You don't. He's too good.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
But I'll say this also, but Notre Dame also feels the same way about Charles Jagasaw and Elijah Page. Now, we can agree to disagree with them, all that. That's fine. But I'm just telling you how Notre Dame feels. And us here, we're not agree with it because Notre Dame says so kind of thing, right? No one's infallible. But you and I understand the dilemma that Notre Dame find themselves in, because from the minute we started watching Elijah Page, he doesn't have the floor of Monroe Freeling and Charles Jagasaw. This kid's got an incredibly high ceiling. Yep. And I love Charles Jagasaw and obviously Monroe Freeling we both view as a dude. So they're in an interesting situation now moving forward, Ryan, because they can only guarantee 2 more spots. And there's 3 guys that they view as big time players, because you have to understand something. To Harry Heastan, Tommy Reese, they do not care one bit about rankings. Not one bit. Mm-hmm. They look for potential, upside. What can this guy be if he fills out his potential? And when they see these 3 kids, they view all of them in a very similar light. If this kid reaches his full potential, he could be a star. I'm just telling you what I'm told. And Elijah Page the same way. And then when they met Elijah Page, one of the things I was told about him during his visit is he has ballooned. And well, I shouldn't say ballooned because that makes it seem like fat. He has filled out big time. Yeah. Like he's 3 bills now already, is what I was told. And it's a healthy 3 bills, meaning like this kid's going to be huge. So that is something that kind of swayed them as well, right? Because when you and I were watching the film, we're like, I don't know how big this kid is. Like, maybe he was listed like 290, 295, and we're like, I don't know if he's that big, right? And he told us he was 280 on film, like 275, 280 on film. And you just didn't see that big size and all that. But you loved the frame and the length and the athleticism was all there. Well, if he's already 3 bills now, and I saw a picture of him from camp, and Ryan, it is a solid, it's a well put together 300 pounds. You start to say, okay, the size is there, but then you got to evaluate these 3 guys. So they're in a very, very unique situation. And I said this yesterday, Ryan, and I said it. You just kind of then moved on. I want to get your opinion on it.
Yep.
I am, and it's the 3rd time I've said it, I am vehemently and belligerently against taking 6 offensive linemen in one class. I'm against over signing at a position. But for anything, just like I'm against putting all your eggs in a quarterback basket. But there are always exceptions to the rule. Like Dante was an exception to the rule of quarterback. We'll see how that pans out. We'll talk about that in another show. This is one of those years in an offensive lineman where when I look at what's in front and I look at what's behind, I believe that I would take 6. And I'll state my case here in a minute, but I first wanted to kind of throw the floor to you and say, is this a year that you would consider figuring out a way to make room for 6 guys in this class?
I mean, that was like one of the first things we talked about on the phone yesterday, right? When you hear that things are trending well with Joe Otting, things are trending well with Elijah Page, your initial thought is we thought it was 4 to 5 players, 5 offensive linemen kind of being the cap, but there's 3 really good players that are still on the board, man. Like, and we know timeline wise, the first thing I asked was, what's that mean for Monroe Freeling? Because that's, that would take it to 6 because he was in theory the last guy that's going to make his college decision. And you know that I am a big advocate of this. You cannot not take, I know it's a double negative, but you cannot not take Monroe Freeling. You can't. I mean, the kid, in my opinion, and I know he's, a top 100 player, but in my opinion, no matter where he ends up, this is a top 50 player in this class.
We both have him graded as a top 50 guy.
Yeah, he's tremendous, man. Like I would argue that he's a top 30 player. Like I think of that highly of him. He is a fantastic football player. So yes, take it to 6 if Monroe Freeling wants to come. Absolutely. Because I love Charles Jagusah's upside. I love Monroe Freeling's upside. And I like Elijah Page. I was like for a while, if you're going to take 5, Elijah Page at the 5th in the ideal world is great. Like I love Elijah Page's upside. But all I'm going to say is with the timeline, how it's going to end, you have to go to 6, in my opinion. I don't know if it's a reality, but in my opinion, you should go to 6 because Monroe Freeling's special.
Sure. Let me ask you this question.
Yep.
Let's say you get Elijah Page, right? Let's say he commits soon. And then let's say Monroe Freeling decides during his visit that he wants to come too. Do you say no to Charles Jagusah? I think that's the problem. Like, I can't talk myself into saying no to any of these guys. And that's the problem. Now you can say, well, they shouldn't have taken this, but they took those guys and they like those guys. And I think Sam Pendleton brings something different to the table that you're looking for something different than what those other guys bring to the table.
Yeah.
And so I look at it and I say, you couldn't have said no to the guys that you had because you would have needed to hit the inside straight to go past 5. You needed to get everybody. Well, that's kind of where we think they are. Because I think the one thing is I don't think Notre Dame is as confident in their position with Monroe Freeling as you and I are in their position with Monroe Freeling. I think that's the concern. Right. I think the concern is that you turn one of these kids down and then Monroe Freeling picks Clemson or Georgia or Bama down the road, and now you didn't get the 5. And I think because of some circumstances on the current team that I'm not comfortable talking about, that I think people know what I'm referring to, there's now a greater need for a 5th offensive lineman in this class. And so I think the circumstances have changed in some ways to me to say, look, we can't say no to Page or Jagusah because we view them as big time players. and then lose Freeling down the road. I think the reason for the openness to 6 is more about what you just said. We can't say no to Page. We can't say no to Jagasol because they're too good, but we definitely also cannot say no to Freeling. That's my read of the situation. I know other people are saying that they're not pushing for. Trust me, Notre Dame loves Monroe Freeling. I think the only concern here is some people at Notre Dame aren't as confident with where they stand with him. Right. I think it's more about them just not knowing how to read him than it is anything else. And I've tried to make that clear to people that I think you're reading him wrong, but we'll see. We'll see. But the point is that I will say this. You have to get one of Page or Freeling. You cannot miss on both of them.
You mean Jagasol and Freeling?
No. Page and Freeling.
Okay.
Page and Freeling. And the reason why is because they're the only pure left tackle types on the – now, look, a left tackle can play right tackle, right? Sure. You and I agree on that. But a right tackle can't always play left tackle in a pro-style offense. And Notre Dame is a pro-style offense. So between Page and Freeling, you have to get at least one of them in order for me to say – because it's not just about getting 3 tackles, Ryan. You got to get somebody that can play left tackle, right? And I think that's the key. That's the key, is getting one of those guys that can be a pure left tackle. And that's why I say Page. Jagasol is important too. I'm just saying between those two, I think they're going to get Jagasol. We feel good about where they are there. Between Page and Freeling, you've got to get one of the two, because you have to get at least one guy in this class that can be a pure left tackle. Because if Emil Wagner can't fill out, because again, we have similar questions with Emil. Here's the difference between Emil Wagner and Joe Otting. If somebody's thinking like, wait a minute, what? Hold on. He's listed as the same weight as Emil Wagner. What's the issue? When you look at Joe Otting, you see a thick, lower-bodied kid, right? So he's going to have to add weight here. The problem with Emil Wagner is he's got a thin lower body. He's got a tight end, defensive end lower body. He does not have an offensive lineman lower body. That's a concern with Emil. And if he answers that, then he's going to be fine. He's got 5-star upside is what I gave him last year. It's about, can he fill out? So, and Joe, I'm not as concerned about that, to be honest with you. But you need tackles. And if Emil can't pan out, then you don't really have a whole lot of left tackles left on the board, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Yeah. I mean, that layer is really important, because we've talked about this, right? Like, I think we see Sullivan Absher pretty similarly. It's like, okay, he's going to get a shot at right tackle, but most likely he might be a guard long-term. We'll see what happens. Charles Jagasaw, if he's a tackle, he's a right tackle. Like, he's not going to be a left tackle in Notre Dame's system. Elijah Page absolutely has left tackle traits, and Monroe Freeling has special left tackle traits. So you can't miss on one of those players. I agree completely. You have to get at least one of them in the class. Otherwise, you're gambling. Like, I don't like forcing yourself into a corner, right? Like, you want options so that you make the best option. You don't want to make an option. You don't want to have to make a move out of desperateness, right? Out of disparity. You don't want to do that. And I like Emil Wagner. I think he has upside, but if he doesn't pan out, what are the other options that are on the board? You need those players so you have options. That's what this recruiting cycle is about. It's about the depth at certain spots so that you have options. You're not forced into playing players that aren't ready or aren't suitable for the role.